Last week we were on El Bastardo Peak on the east end, near the east end of the Madre Mountains Ridgeline, which is that cliff system that you see at the upper end of Red Rock Canyon. And we're looking at it right now. This week we are going to be on the west end of the Madre Mountains Ridgeline. We'll be starting out at White Rock Mountain, where we are now. There's White Rock Mountain, and we are at the Willow Spring parking area in Red Rock Canyon. But what we're going to do is circle around the left side here, the west side of White Rock Mountain, and then ascend the Madre Springs area. And one of the challenges of today is just making it through Upper Madre Springs. Last time I was there last fall, it was just choked with brush. And by the way, it is slated to be 96 degrees in the Las Vegas Valley today. So we are near the end of the time. It's the end of May. We're near the end of the time where you can be at this altitude. You'll need to be ascending to a higher altitude, probably the Mount Charleston Wilderness, very soon. Our highest altitude should be somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000 feet today. We are on Rocky Gap Road right now, as we were before in the picnic area. And looking back, we've come along Rocky Gap Road from below. One interesting thing about the area at the base of the Rainbow Mountains, there's the Rainbow Mountains, the northern edge, and then there is White Rock Mountain. We were there just a moment ago, down at the Willow Spring area. One interesting thing about the base of these mountains down here is that this was the winter living area for the Anasasis and other Native Americans dating back to pre-Columbian times. There are cooking pits, petroglyphs, and nice places you can that have overhangs that create shelter that you can use to spend the winter. But when it got hot in the summer, these nomadic tribes would then ascend to the upper areas. There's the Madre Ridgeline, and areas up on that ridgeline, they would spend the hotter times of the summer. Maybe we'll find some evidence of the Native Americans up on the Madre Ridgeline. Not sure. I have found some evidence previously. Not sure if we'll find some today. This is an adventure that traverses a lot of wilderness areas. Here's the Madre Mountain Ridgeline, as I mentioned. You can see more of it now. And there's the junction with the Wilson Ridgeline. And that heads off to the left of that high point. But there are also some wilderness areas that we are traversing. Here's the Rainbow Mountains Wilderness. There's the very northern tip of the Rainbow Mountains. And here is where we head into the La Madre Mountains Wilderness. So the two major wilderness areas, La Madre Mountains, Rainbow Mountain, and then looking down into Red Rock Canyon. Here we go. Up, around White Rock Mountain and then connecting with the La Madre Springs trail. Okay, from when we started at Willow Springs, we've been on what's called the White Rock Mountain Loop, and that is a loop you can see on Las Vegas area trails going around the loop. It's about 5 miles, a little less than 5 miles, and it's a great workout trail, place to run, hike. Anyway, that's looking back on the White Rock Mountain Loop, and then looking to an intersection. Here's where the loop splits off to the right and continues around White Rock Mountain, which is above us, a little bit blinded by the sun. And here is where the La Madre Springs Trail begins. So you just continue on the large trail and you're on La Madre Springs Trail. Show you a little more. Okay, so we're going to continue to the left toward La Madre Springs. We've continued up the La Madre Springs Trail, and now we are at the entrance to La Madre Springs. Look at these spring flowers, by the way. Pretty awesome. Last time I was up this gully, this is the La Madre Springs Gully, and water flows year round in this gully. Last time I was here, there was no trail. It was all grown out by brush. And so the best thing you can do at this point, a little ahead, all semblance of a trail will disappear. I'll show you some of that brushy area. But as you get up into this gully ahead, the best thing you can do is just stay to the gully, and you're going to cross over to the right side eventually, then the left side, then the right side, whichever gives you the best pathway up the gully. At first, this little trail that I'm on is decent. However, soon it will disappear into a tangle of brush in this year-round watered area of La Madre Springs. I won't show a lot of this, but this is a good example of what you face in this area. There's the spring, pretty healthy. But you can see all the reeds. You can see numerous crossings. And you're basically finding your way through this. We're looking down now on the La Madre Springs Canyon, and having noticed a number of little pathways, unmarked pathways that head up to this ridge, I decided to go ahead and leave the tangled brush in the canyon and head up this ridge. May lead to a dead end. I'm thinking there's a good chance that's what's going to happen. But on the other hand, we'll explore today at least the terrain up in this area and see what we can see. A lot of thick manzanita, other brush, cacti. If you get off of whatever path you can find, whether it's animal or human. Yeah, it can be a world of hurt with the brush, sharp sage. So anyway, yeah, let's continue on just to see what we can see up at this point. I wanted to summit the La Madre Ridgeline over in that area. I'm not confident this is going to take me where I can summit the ridgeline, but at least it'll take me to a point where I can see what's up in this area, which I've always wondered. Wow, it's pretty interesting up here. Yeah, there's that cliff area that I wanted to circle around the backside. Not thinking that's going to happen from this position, but look at this. We have risen above La Madre Springs. You can see the gully below. And you can actually see, looking toward White Rock Mountain now, you can actually see the beginning of the La Madre Springs trail or non-trail. There's White Rock Mountain, Turtlehead Peak, Damsel Peak, El Bastardo's up here. Here's the La Madre Ridgeline, where I was hoping to summit. That may not happen today. But I've always wanted to explore this ridge. I got sidetracked because I wanted to get out of the brush in the La Madre Spring Gulch. Anyway, let's continue up here. This is getting kind of interesting. And we'll just see what connections there are up here, or lack thereof. If need be, I can get across to this neighboring ridgeline, pretty much head down the ridgeline all the way down to the La Madre Springs trail area. Yeah, right there. So, yeah, and back to White Rock Mountain. That may be what we do today. Let's find out. Let's just see what surprises await up in this area. Great perspective on this ridge just west, on the west side of the La Madre Springs Gulch. And yeah, let's take a look at things we can see. Here you can see the area where the miner's cabin is, down in there. And then you can see, if you look carefully, you can see a kind of ridge line that summits the La Madre Ridge. This is the ridge line I was going to take, but then I got sidetracked in the brush at La Madre Springs. And then look around. Here's a pretty cliffy area, but I wonder if it's possible to get onto this next ridge and what one can see from this next ridge. I know this next ridge over here leads all the way down to the La Madre Springs Trail, where the wide trail ends and the narrow and brushy trail begins. So, yeah, at the least I want to get over to this next ridge and descend, and perhaps the approach is going to be up ahead here. But when I get over to the summit of that ridge, I also want to see what lies beyond. This is an area I have not been in. Here you can look over to Bridge Mountain, give a little perspective. And then White Rock Mountain, Turtlehead Peak, Damsel Peak, looking up in this direction toward El Bastardo, up there on the Madre Ridgeline, and then back to that area that we were looking at on the Madre Ridgeline that has that approach ridge is actually the easiest approach to the La Madre Ridgeline. Okay, so there you have it. This is where we are right now. And let's continue on and just see what we can discover up in this direction, up on the west ridge above La Madre Springs. Well, this is becoming pretty interesting. I'm going to call this the La Madre Springs West Ridge Loop, and hopefully I'll be able to make the whole loop. There you see the La Madre Springs gully below us, looking up toward El Bastardo. Good shot of Damsel Peak, Turtlehead Peak, and the east side of White Rock Mountain. There we're looking up at the La Madre Ridgeline. And then we've got this cliff area above us. And you see another descent ridge just west of here. This is why I may call this the La Madre Springs West Ridge Loop, because hopefully we'll loop down this second ridge line, ending up pretty much at the La Madre Springs trail where the wide part ends. So you can see White Rock Mountain, and then over in this direction, Sandstone Peak, Bridge Mountain, Sandstone Peak on the right, Bridge Mountain more toward the center. So yeah, let's just continue upward on this interesting ridge line, see if we can circle around to the next ridge line and make this a loop, La Madre Springs West Ridge Loop. And then looking around to this side, you can see on the other side of the La Madre Springs Gully, there could be an East Ridge Loop, looping around and above White Rock Mountain, heading toward Turtlehead Peak, and then back down. So yeah, lots of possibilities here. But it's just a beautiful, untouched area with spectacular views all around. Well, what do you think? I'm nearing the summit of this ridge, and yeah, there are some possibilities up in the cliffs, mostly over in this area. But I'm not going to be climbing on cliffs today. So what I've been looking at is going to the neighboring ridge and then circling, heading down that ridge to make this a loop, the La Madre Springs West Ridge Loop. And it looks like if there is a way across to that other ridge line, it's going to be somewhere right in this area. So let's go ahead and see what we can find here as we cross over. Either we're going to cross over or we're going to head back down the ridge line we are on. And look at the view. Amazing, amazing. Okay, let's see if we can find a way across here without getting into any vertical territory. Okay, and between the ridge I ascended, there's the ridge I ascended. We're near the base of the cliffs here. And looking for a crossover point to this next ridge. Looks like we may have found it, not certain yet, but yeah, it's looking fairly possible. So we want to get on this neighboring ridge and then descend the ridge, get back down to the La Madre Springs Trail and over to the White Rock Mountain trailhead at Willow Springs. So yeah, just beautiful, untouched. You won't see a soul up here. But you can pretty much see where we are. And yeah, that looks like a potential passageway up to the top of the cliffs, but I don't know if those are the La Madre Mountain or the Wilson Ridge cliffs. We don't know. Let's get down here across to the next ridge, see what's over the other side, and that will reveal more about where we are. Well, so far so good. I've managed to make it across from that ridge that we were just on using little animal trails. And here you get a perspective of where we are. And look, here's the ridge we're shooting for. We're almost at the ridge line itself. Still following the animal trails, which give out now and then, causing me to need to plow through brush or find alternate pathways. But I'm going to continue on here. You can see a faint trail ahead. So let's get up on that next ridge. And then it's just a matter of descending the ridge. But I want to see what's over that ridge, what you can see on the other side of the ridge. And just to complete the circuit, here we're looking down toward White Rock Mountain. You can see the Calico Hills beyond. There they are. Tip of White Rock Mountain. There's Turtlehead Peak. Damsel Peak through the trees. Over to El Bastardo. And then around, up to the cliffs above. As you can see, we're pretty close to the baseline of the cliffs there. And if there is a passage through to the summit of the cliffs, it would be right there. Anyway, continuing around, let's look for the top of that ridge. There it is. That's the ridge we want to ascend to the center of the ridge and then take a left and descend. So there you have it. Back to White Rock Mountain below and Turtlehead Peak. Well, it turns out that ridge I was looking at, was an intervening ridge. Still one more ridge to go, but it looks pretty doable. So up to this next ridge and then down the ridge. We'll see how navigating that ridge turns out. Should be interesting and end up right at the near the beginning of the La Madre Springs trail below. And this is a pretty nice rest spot under this juniper tree. Hot day, 96 degrees in the Las Vegas Valley, and beautiful view up to the cliff line above. And I do believe that area that looks like a saddle with the rocky outcrop, little pillar in the center, I believe that could be a passageway up to the top of the cliffs, but maybe not. I'm not going to try it today. Spectacular opening between the two ridges. Look at this. La Madre Ridgeline up in this direction. Turtlehead Peak and Damsel Peak. One on either side of the Brownstone Basin. Turtlehead Peak on the west side, Damsel Peak on the east side. White Rock Mountain in the foreground. Calico Hills in the background. You'd be able to see the Las Vegas Strip very clearly, except it's a hazy day. But there's the Las Vegas Strip. And yeah, we've got a ways to go here to get onto the neighboring ridge that we're going to descend. And there may be some intervening ridges still, but look at what I found. It's a little trail. Probably an animal trail. I don't think any people come up here. So there you have it. Incredibly beautiful area. And by the way, below is the La Madre Springs gully down just over the other side of this ridge in the foreground. We've successfully crossed the gap between the two major ridges here. And there you can see the La Madre Ridgeline up above. Wow, that looks imposing. And like I said, possibly an entrance point right through this channel, but it looks like it'd be class 3 or possibly above. We don't know. But then looking over, let's see if I can get a better situation here. Yeah. Okay, yeah, here it is. You're looking at the Wilson Ridge now. There goes the Wilson Ridge. And there below is Rocky Gap Road. Between the Wilson Ridge on the right and the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline on the left. So yeah, this is an awesome perspective up here, and so beautiful and entirely untouched. I guarantee nobody has been up here, at least not in recent history. Okay, so now the thing is to see if we can stay on this ridge line and head down to the La Madre Springs Trail. That should be interesting. But I think it's possible from what I've seen from a distance. So let's go ahead and see how far we get. You know what? Just possibly, if I can get to this ridge below, a little bit more to the west, I might be able to make it all the way down to the White Rock Mountain Loop Trail. Looks very doable. So let's check that out. I can always return to this longer route if I want, but this looks really interesting. And also it promises to provide a way up from below that would end up more in this area. Although I don't know what I can do once I get up here, but it would be a way to explore and test some things out. Yes, it looks like there is a way down to this little shortcut ridge. So let's take the shortcut ridge. And you can see the La Madre Springs and White Rock Mountain Loop trails where they connect down below the bottom of this ridge. So yeah, let's go ahead and take this, and hopefully we won't come up against any insurmountable barriers which cause us to turn around. It looks gradual enough on all sides that even if there is a barrier, I think I could still manage it. Let's give it a try. Successful descent to Shortcut Ridge. And there's even a cairn up here. And wow, spectacular view, new perspectives on the Wilson Ridge above. Look at that. Switchback Springs area right up here. That's a potential ascent point that I want to try in the future. Maybe up this way. We'll see. There's a lot of vertical around there to watch out for. Rocky Gap Road, just to give you perspective. Wilson Ridge on the right, Rainbow Mountains, Upper Crest Ridgeline on the left. And then this shortcut ridge should lead down to the west side of White Rock Mountain, where the parking area is. We'll see. There could be a barrier, which, if that happens, would cause us to have to go all the way back up and then down that other ridge. And by the way, you can see the gleam of the Luxor on the Las Vegas Strip. See that pyramid? Oh, let's get close as we can. Yeah, that's about it. So, heading down Shortcut Ridge, let's see if it lives up to its name. Gives us a shortcut back to where we started. at Willow Springs. So far, Shortcut Ridge is working well. There is a steep downhill here. I have found that if you stay on the center of the ridge, that usually is the easiest route overall. If you descend to the right or to the left, you can get into more complicated territory. So we'll stick mostly to the center of the ridge, and you can see the neighboring ridge, which we would have descended alternately. And here's Shortcut Ridge and all the way up. And then another perspective on the Wilson Ridge. Look at that. And then around. Wilson Ridge on the right. Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline on the left. Rocky Gap Road right between. And then looking down toward our goal, which is the White Rock Mountain Loop Trail. So it all looks doable, just depending on which route we take. Well, there are a few rocky high points on this ridge, making it a little complicated. Not bad though. You can always find a way to weave around to the right or the left of the rock formations, or maybe right over the top. Never exactly the same strategy. Here's a high formation that we have just passed. Now we're below it. So we continue to descend. I think I'm going to try the left side of this next rocky formation, and I think that actually this may be the last barrier on the ridge. We'll see. And then just look around. Yeah, this isn't exactly a shortcut ridge because there's some complication on the ridge. Maybe this ridge over in this direction looks more gradual, but no, it would have been just as complicated when it comes to it, because you can see a lot of rock formations on the center of the ridge. So yeah, this is just as good as any, and it's going to land us closer to our starting point. I've continued weaving my way around the rocky areas on this shortcut ridge. That's the latest. And we continue to descend, but yeah, this is another rocky area ahead. Hopefully it's going to level off soon and things will go a little faster. But what I wanted to show here is that there is actually a little road down here. Let's see if we can nail it. Yeah, there it is. I don't know where exactly this comes from. It does lead down to Rocky Gap Road. Don't know exactly where it goes. I think it ends somewhere right around this area. Because I can guarantee it doesn't go all the way up there. But there you have it, the latest of where we are, plus the discovery of a little road continuing down. Well, there were a couple more rocky areas to navigate around, and then 2 or 3 steep slopes, loose rock everywhere. And I've been careful today. I've got a tender knee injury and I cannot lose my footing even once and catch myself on these loose rocks. And so far I've been able to do that all day. Anyway, you see two ridges below. I'm going to head for the ridge on the right. And both ridges are connecting with the trail below the White Rock Mountain Loop. And you can see where all the trails connect with Rocky Gap Road. So yeah, the most difficult portion is now done. This has been an awesome loop adventure. I call it the La Madre Springs West Ridge Loop. Big loop of the ridges to the west of La Madre Springs. And we'll do a 360 here. Love how the whole landscape changes with the changing of the sunlight, the angle of the sun, and with the perspective where we are. And there you can see the ridge to the right is the alternate ridge we could have descended. Glad we took Shortcut Ridge. And maybe you can see that little road below us. Who knows how that was created or where it goes. Doesn't go very far. Okay, taking the ridge to the right, descending to the White Rock Mountain Loop. Okay, after a fairly level area on this shortcut ridge, there is a final descent here. It looks like there are a few washes below, so we'll see how that goes. Doesn't look too difficult. And then you can see trails below, and right down in this area is the main trail leading back to Rocky Gap Road and Willow Spring. And then looking around from this perspective. And we pretty much came down this ridge system, but we crossed over this ridge system, and you see both of them descend to this area. Back to White Rock Mountain and to the Willow Spring area. Here we go. As we descend to the very base of what I call Shortcut Ridge, reconnecting with White Rock Mountain Loop, close to Willow Spring. We'll do a quick summary of this adventure. I had originally set out to do an adventure on the La Madre Ridgeline, a larger loop that would include the La Madre Ridgeline and part of the Wilson Ridge. But got bogged down in La Madre Spring area, all the underbrush. So I decided to take off up a ridge line to the west, the left of La Madre Spring Gully, and just continued to ascend that ridge line, then thought, well, why not turn this into a loop? And so what I did is traversed right at the base of the La Madre Ridgeline cliffs and traversed a couple approach ridges, finally descended on this shortcut ridge to make a huge loop adventure. And what I've got to say about this adventure, even though it doesn't go to any specific remarkable destination, What it does is encompasses a whole hidden area above Willow Spring and between Willow Spring and La Madre Spring. And the terrain was beautiful. It's all class 2 walking, a lot of loose rock, some steep slopes, but the terrain and the views, the surrounding views changed as we progressed and as the sun changed its angle. So this was a very beautiful trek, even though it didn't go anywhere in particular. So that's the summary of today's adventure. Now we're almost at the White Rock Mountain Loop again and the Willow Spring area, but just wanted to make that summary of this adventure. Turned out a little different than we'd planned, but how beautiful.